Hello and welcome to this Beyond Shakespeare exploring session, the final look at Tamburlaine the Great, part 2. And it's been quite a journey with our core team here looking at this fabulous, terrifying, disturbing, and occasionally quite funny play. Dark funny, I think it would be fair to say most of the time. I'm your host, Robert Crighton. Today I'm going to be reading all the kings, unless specified otherwise. There's quite a few random kings in this. Amyras, citizen, messenger, and occasional random other people. It's quite a busy close as we finish Act 3 and head rapidly towards the end of the play. We have a fantastic team doing extreme doubling for you today. So, reading, among other things, a messenger, Usumcasane and/or Techelles, depending on mood, Celebinus and Olympia is...
Hello, I'm Heloise Spring and I'm an actor based in London.
And reading Orcanes, Maximus and Amasia, and probably some other things, is...
Oh, it's me, sorry. My name is Sascha Cooper, and I'm an actress, performer, writer and director, and lots more besides, based in Brighton in the UK.
And reading, second time reading, someone actually get a chance to read the same part twice. Reading Theridamas, Peridcas, Concubines and Citizen 1 is...
Hello, I'm Sarah Blake. I'm an actor, writer and director, and I run a small audiobook company called Sounds Curious.
And reading the revengeful Callapine, Calyphas, governor and first physician is...
Hi, my name is William Sutton, and I'm an actor based here in Amsterdam.
And last but not least, reading the man himself, Tamburlaine, is...
Hi, I'm Alan Scott. I'm not an actor by profession, and I live close to Robert in Suffolk.
Yes, however, this time we're only able to converse via technology, though I suppose we could try raising smoke signals outside. I forgot to do a trigger warning last time. I think we should briefly mention that there are some seriously dark themes coming up. Questions of religious intolerance. This is not an ecumenical matter. Perhaps it could be argued this is a very ecumenical matter in the sense that Tamburlaine is against quite a few religions in this play. So you have been warned. I think trying to do a précis at this point would be a bit superfluous. We will précis as we go along. This scene, we're going to be stopping and starting quite a lot because there are considerably more parts than we really have available. So we're going to open the scene with Callapine, Orcanes, various kings between Sarah and myself, and we'll pause in a little bit. Enter Callapine, Orcanes, the kings of Jerusalem, Tresibon, and Soria with their train, Almeida and a messenger.
Renowned Emperor, mighty Callapine, God's great lieutenant over all the world, here at Aleppo, with an host of men, lies Tamburlaine, this king of Persia, in number more than are the quivering leaves of Ida's forest, where your highness's hounds with open cry pursue the wounded stag, who means to girt Natolia's walls with siege, fire the town and overrun the land.
My royal army is as great as his, that from the bounds of Phrygia to the sea which washeth Cyprus with his brinish waves, covers the hills, the valleys, and the plains. Viceroys and peers of Turkey play the men. Whet all your swords to mangle Tamburlaine, his sons, his captains, and his followers. By Mahomet, not one of them shall live. The field wherein this battle shall be fought forever termed the Persian sepulchre in memory of this, our victory.
Now that he calls himself the scourge of Jove, the emperor of the world and earthly god, shall end the warlike progress he intends, and travel headlong to the lake of hell, where legions of devils, knowing he must die here in Natolia by your highness's hands, or brandishing their brands of quenchless fire, stretching their monstrous paws, grin with their teeth, and guard the gates to entertain his soul.
Tell me, viceroys, the number of your men, and what our army royal is esteemed.
From Palestina and Jerusalem, of Hebrews 70,000 fighting men are come since last we showed your majesty.
So from Arabia desert, and the bounds of that sweet land whose brave metropolis re-edified the fair Semiramis, came 40,000 warlike foot and horse since we last numbered to your majesty.
From Trebizond, in Asia the less, naturalized Turks and stout Bithynians came to my bands, full 50,000 more, that fighting know not what retreat doth mean, nor e'er return but with the victory, since last we numbered to your majesty.
Of Saurians from Hala is repaired, and neighbour cities of your highness land, 10,000 horse and 30,000 foot, since last we numbered to your majesty, so that the army royal is esteemed 600,000 valiant fighting men.
Then welcome, Tamburlaine, unto thy death. Come, puissant viceroys, let us to the field, the Persian sepulchre, and sacrifice mountains of breathless men to Mahomet, who now with Jove opens the firmament to see the slaughter of our enemies.
And we'll just briefly pause there because much as we'd like to do a pitch battle scene, both them and us cannot quite afford the number of extras required or the space on stage. So instead we have more of a sort of pre-battle talk as enter Tamburlaine with his three sons, and there may be some shifting of parts coming up here, but I think for the most part, apart from the messenger now becoming one of Tamburlaine's lieutenants, we can continue pretty much unchanged. So enter Tamburlaine with his three sons, Calyphas, Amyras, and Celebinus, and Usumcasane and others.
How now, Cassani? See, a knot of kings sitting as if they were telling riddles.
My lord, your presence makes them pale and wan. Poor souls, they look as if their deaths were near.
Why, so here's Cassani, I'm here. But yet I'll save their lives and make them slaves. Ye petty kings of Turkey, I am come, as Hector did into the Grecian camp, to overdare the pride of Gracia, and set his warlike person to the view of fierce Achilles, rival of his fame. I do you honour in the simile, for if I should, as Hector did Achilles, the worthiest knight that ever brandished sword, challenge in combat any of you all, I see how fearfully you would refuse, and fly my gub as from a scorpion.
Ah, now thou art fearful of thy army's strength. Thou wouldst with overmatch of person fight. But, shepherd's issue, base-born Tamburlaine, think of thy end. This sword shall lance thy throat.
Villain, the shepherd's issue, at whose birth heaven did afford a gracious aspect, and joined those stars that shall be opposite, even till the dissolution of the world, and never meant to make a conqueror so famous as his mighty Tamburlaine, shall show torment thee, and that Callapine, that, like a roguish runaway, suborned, that villain there, the slave, that Turkish dog, to false his service to his sovereign, as ye shall curse the birth of Tamburlaine.
Rail not, proud Scythian. I shall now revenge my father's vile abuses, and mine own.
By Mahomet, he shall be tied in chains, rowing with Christians in a brigandine about the Grecian isles to rob and spoil and turn him to his ancient trade again. Methinks the slave should make a lusty thief.
Nay, when the battle ends, all we will meet, and sit in council to invent some pain that most may vex his body and his soul.
Sirrah Callapine, I'll hang a clog about your neck for running away again. You shall not trouble me thus to come and fetch you. But as for you, viceroys, you shall have bits and harnessed like my horses draw my coach. And when ye stay, be lashed with whips of wire. I'll have you learn to feed on provender, and at a stable lie upon the planks.
But, Tamburlaine, first thou shalt kneel to us and humbly crave a pardon for thy life.
The common soldiers of our mighty host shall bring thee bound unto the general's tent.
And all have jointly sworn thy cruel death, or bind thee in eternal torment's wrath.
Well, sirs, diet yourselves. You know I shall have occasion shortly to journey you.
See, father, how Almeida the jailer looks upon us.
Villain, traitor, damned fugitive, I'll make thee wish the earth had swallowed thee. Seest thou not death within my wrathful looks? Go, villain, cast thee headlong from a rock, or rip thy bowels and rent out thy heart to appease my wrath, or else I'll torture thee, searing thy hateful flesh with burning irons and drops of scalding lead, while all thy joints be racked and beat asunder with the wheel. For, if thou livest, not any element shall shroud thee from the wrath of Tamburlaine.
Well, in
I just pauses there anyway. I was going to pause us anyway, because there's a little aside that we should mention. We're talking about Almeida, who I will briefly read the one line they say in this scene. But within this scene, this is the person who I think is the one who released Callapine from prison,
Yes.
isn't it? He's the
Yes,
betrayer.
he's the one who helped him escape.
So what we've got so far in this scene is come and have a go if you think you're hard enough.
Yeah.
And then they see the personal revenge figure there as well, who's just making it clear we're coming to get you. Before we rattle on to the end of this scene, because we're about to have some reinforcements coming in, which makes it even more fiddly. And you may be wondering, in the audience at home, where's Theridamas? Where's the rest of Tamburlaine's matey crew? Well, any moment now they'll be coming in. Any thoughts on this scene so far?
Trash talking.
Sorry, yeah, Williams.
Trash talking.
On both sides.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it is definitely the, you know, you could almost think it's the Sharks and the Jets.
Yeah, well, it's sort of a hacker sort of situation, isn't it? They're trying to psych the enemy out, and it's that psychological warfare thing again.
Yeah.
Do we see any difference between this and, say, some of the earlier versions of this sort of act? Because we've had this battles before. Do we notice any real difference in tone, or is it quite the same sort of game?
I would say that perhaps Callapine's forces seem to have a bit more meat on their bones. They seem to have a bit more weight behind their threats, possibly, which, could turn out to be true, or could turn out to be a big, red herring on the part of Marlowe. But they do seem to have a bit of heft to them, to their threats.
Yeah, because this scene starts with Tamburlaine and his sons, who I think probably at this point might be depicted as being slightly older than they were earlier. Just a thought there. Maybe not. I don't know if the internal logic holds up for that. But it's just Tamburlaine and one lieutenant, and there's 5 of them plus their army. So you get the impression at the beginning of the scene this might not be going well.
Yeah.
Shall we crack on? Let's get to the end of the scene. We're about to have the entrance of Theridamas and Techelles, and there will be. I'll be reading any remaining kings, and Techelles will be read by the other Usumcasane. But I will read Almeida. So he's talking about the traitor. Flinging those insults from Tamburlaine, and Callapine stands up for him.
Well, in despite of thee, he shall be king. Come, Almeida, receive this crown of me. I here invest thee king of Ariadan, bordering on Mare Rosso, near to Mecca.
What? Take it, man.
Oh, good my lord, let me take it.
Dost thou ask him leave? Here, take it.
Go to, sirrah. Take your crown and make up the half dozen. So, sirrah, now you are a king, you must give alms.
So he shall, and wear thy head in his scutcheon.
No, let him hang a bunch of keys on his standard to put him in remembrance he was a jailer, that, when I take him, I may knock out his brains with them, and lock you in the stable when you shall come sweating from my chariot.
Away, let us to the field that the villain may be slain.
Sirrah, prepare whips, and bring my chariot to my tent, for, as soon as the battle is done, I'll ride in triumph through the camp.
Enter Theridamas, Techelles, and their train.
How now, ye petty kings? Lo, here are bugs will make the hair stand upright on your heads, and cast your crowns in slavery at their feet. Welcome, Theridamas and Techelles both. See you this rout, and know ye this same king?
Aye, my lord, he was Callapine's keeper.
Well, now you see he is a king. Look to him, Theridamas, when we are fighting, lest he hide his crown as the foolish king of Persia did.
No, Tamburlaine, he shall not be put to that exigent, I warrant thee.
You know not, sir. But now, my followers and my loving friends, fight as you ever did, like conquerors. The glory of this happy day is yours. My stern aspect shall make fair victory, hovering betwixt our armies, light on me, loaden with laurel wreaths to crown us all.
Yep, sorry. I've had a someone jump in. I've had a complete something's
Okay.
gone.
I smile to think how, when this field is fought and rich Natolia ours, our men shall sweat with carrying pearl and treasure on their backs.
You shall be princes all immediately. Come, fight, ye Turks, or yield us victory.
No, we will meet thee, slavish Tamburlaine.
And they exeunt severally. So, busy old scene. A bit of a tables turning action there. Really, really, really nicely done. I'm just wondering, how do you play that whole bit of saying to Tamburlaine, should I take it? Is that supposed to be sarky, or is he genuinely asking Tamburlaine whether he can be a king? It's a really weird bit.
It's an odd bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think there's a hell of a lot of sarcasm on all sides going on here.
Yeah, it just sounds like, has he just reverted to for a moment there? And is that what the intention is? And that he forgets himself for a moment. Everyone's going, it's your cue. Come on, put the hat on.
Yeah.
Go get on there.
I do love the idea that suddenly they go from being outnumbered to being, in the majority, I suppose, which technically they would be by that point. If you include the sons as potential fighters, then that suddenly becomes a much more even battle. That ends the act. Heloise, are you back on station?
No, yeah, I was still here, but my the device I have the stuff on was not, which is what my issue was.
But you've got your script back?
Got my script back.
Lovely, excellent. We will, I think, move rapidly into Act 4. So we have, shall we say, some family business occurring now.
Right.
I think that's a fair way of putting this, mixed in with busyness. So we have coming up some alarums within. Amyras and Celebinus issue from the tent where Calyphas sits asleep. Who's Amyras? It's going to be me, isn't it? Of course it is. Of course it is. Now in their glories shine the golden crowns of these proud Turks, much like so many suns that half dismay the majesty of heaven. Now, brother, follow we our father's sword, that flies with fury swifter than our thoughts, and cuts down armies with his conquering wings.
Call forth our lazy brother from the tent, for if my father miss him in the field, wrath, kindled in the furnace of his breast, will send a deadly lightning to his heart.
Brother, ho! What, given so much to sleep, you cannot leave it when our enemies' drums and rattling cannons thunder in our ears, our proper ruin and our father's foil?
Away, you fools! My father needs not me, nor you, in faith, but that you will be thought more childish valorous than manly wise. If half our camp should sit and sleep with me, my father were enough to scare the foe. You did dishonor his majesty to think our helps will do him any good.
What, darest thou then be absent from the fight, knowing my father hates thy cowardice, and oft hath warned thee to be still in the field, when he himself against the thickest troops beats down our foes to flesh our taintless swords?
I know, sir, what it is to kill a man. It works remorse of conscience in me. I take no pleasure to be murderers, nor care for blood when wine will quench my thirst.
Oh, cowardly boy, fie for shame, come forth. Thou dost dishonor manhood and thy house.
Go, go, tall stripling, fight you for us both, and take my other toward brother here. For person like to prove a second Mars. 'Twill please my mind as well to hear both you have won a heap of honor in the field, and left your slender carcasses behind, as if I lay with you for company.
You will not go then?
You say true.
Were all the lofty mounts of Zona Mundi, with that fill the midst of farthest Tartary, turned into pearl and profit for my stay, I would not bide the fury of my father when, made a victory in these haughty arms, he comes and finds his sons have had no shares in all the honours he proposed for us.
Take you the honor, I will take my ease. My wisdom shall excuse my cowardice. I go into the field before I need.
And there are alarums within, and Amyras and Celebinus run out. Just want to pause there. The training, I think they've still got to be quite young, actually, don't they? They're not expected absolutely to be in the battle, but they're expected to be in the battle.
They may be slightly older. I think Helen said like 10, 12, 14 before, and now maybe they're 14, 16, 18.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Sarah.
Yeah.
Me too.
And it's that sense, the way Calyphas says, you know, they've been through the killing people thing, and now he drinks.
Yeah.
He knows what it is to kill, and he doesn't want to do it, and he's coping with alcohol in the tent. He wasn't asleep. He's just getting drunk, as how I read it, or how I do it, as a coping mechanism, because you can see this isn't going to go well.
Right?
Yeah.
I wonder whether you were actually overdoing that when
Possibly.
Wine Will Quench My Thirst thing. I was thinking that this was maybe 6 months later, not rather than 3 or 4 years later.
Yeah, I think it's a casting thing. You can't really necessarily have two completely different actors unless you're doing it as a television series. So I think they've got to look a bit older, a bit more mature, but not too much. And try and find your best common ground. Anyway, we're about to have Peridcas come on. Larums are occurring. Calyphas has been left on his own. So we've got a little scenet within this scene here. So, alarums within.
The bullets fly at random where they list, and should I go and kill 1,000 men, I were as soon rewarded with a shot, and sooner far than he that never fights. And should I go and do no harm nor good, I might have harm, which all the good I have, joined with my father's crown, would never cure. Out to cards. Peridcas!
Here, my lord. Here, my lord.
Come, thou and I will go to cards to drive away the time.
Content, my lord. But what shall we play for?
Who shall kiss the fairest of the Turks' concubines first, when my father had conquered them?
Agreed, if faith.
They play.
They say I am a coward, Peridcas, and I fear as little their tarantantaras, their swords, or their cannons as I do a naked lady in net of gold. And for fear I should be afraid, would put it off and come to bed with me.
Such a fear, my lord, would never make you retire.
I would my father would let me be put in front of such a battle once to try my valor. What a coil they keep. I believe there will be some hurt done anon amongst them.
And enter Tamburlaine, Theridamas, Techelles, Usumcasane, Amyras, and Celebinus, leading in. So the battle has happened again with a little scene or off the side of the battle. So they lead in Orcanes and the kings various of Jerusalem, Tresibon, and Soria, who I suspect will be me, and soldiers.
See now, ye slaves, my children, stoop your pride, and lead your bodies sheep-like to the sword. Bring them, my boys, and tell me if the wars be not a life that may illustrate gods, and tickle not your spirits with desire still to be trained in arms and chivalry.
Shall we let go these kings again, my lord, to gather greater numbers against our power, that they may say it is not chance doth this, but matchless strength and magnanimity?
No, no, Amyras, tempt not fortune so. Cherish thy valour still with fresh supplies, and glut it not with stale and daunted foes. But where's this coward villain, not my son, but traitor to my name and majesty?
He goes in and brings Calyphas out.
Image of sloth and picture of a slave, the obloquy and scorn of my renown. How may my heart, thus fired with mine eyes, wounded with shame and killed with discontent, shroud any thought may hold my striving hands from martial justice on thy wretched soul?
Yet pardon him, I pray your majesty.
Let all of us entreat your highness's pardon.
Stand up, ye base, unworthy soldiers. Know ye not yet the argument of arms?
Good my lord, let him be forgiven for once, and we will force him to the field hereafter.
Stand up, my boys, and I will teach ye arms, and what the jealousy of wars must do. O Samarcanda, where I breathed first, and joyed the fire of this martial flesh, blush, blush, fair city, at thy honour's foil, and shame of nature, which Jertes' stream, embracing thee with deepest of his love, can never wash from thy disdained brows. Here, Jove, receive his fainting soul again, a form not meet to give that subject essence, whose matter is the flesh of Tamburlaine, wherein an incorporeal spirit moves, made of the mould whereof thyself consists, which makes me valiant, proud, ambitious, ready to levy power against thy throne, that I might move the turning spheres of heaven. For earth and all this airy region cannot contain the state of Tamburlaine.
And he stabs Calyphas. And we'll just briefly pause. He's actually mid-speech, but just really wanted to underline the action here. So, battle over, they've won, and what's Tamburlaine's first thought?
Kill the coward.
Kill his own son.
They've won.
Yeah.
They've won.
Have they won everything? I don't see Callapine in there yet.
Well,
I think they've won one battle.
Well,
they haven't won the war yet.
Okay, that's a good point. That is a good point. But they have got quite a few people in tied up in some fashion.
Agreed.
But that is a good point. We haven't got Callapine. That's a very good point. Now, it says he stabs Calyphas. It doesn't state at what point Calyphas actually dies, and there's still rest of this speech to go. I wanted to pause here also to just point out that Calyphas is about to. Oh no, that's fine. Yes, of course you're off stage, aren't you? No, it's fine. There isn't a weird doubling thing. There's lots of weird doubling things here, but I just want to make sure it's clear what's going on. Okay, so yes, Tamburlaine, you've just stabbed your son.
By Mahomet, thy mighty friend, I swear, in sending to my issue such a soul, created of the massy dregs of earth, the scum and tartar of the elements, wherein was neither courage, strength, or wit, but folly, sloth, and damned idleness. Thou hast procured a greater enemy than he that darted mountains at thy head, shaking the burden mighty Atlas bears, whereat thou trembling hidest thee in the air, clothed with a pitchy cloud for being seen. And now, ye cankered curs of Asia, that will not see the strength of Tamburlaine, though it shine as brightly as the sun, now you shall feel the strength of Tamburlaine, and by the state of his supremacy approve the difference twixt himself and you.
Thou shrews the difference betwixt ourselves and thee in this thy barbarous damned tyranny.
Thy victories are grown so violent that shortly heaven filled with the meteors of blood and fire thy tyrannies have made will pour down blood and fire on thy head, whose scalding drops will pierce thy seething brains, and with our bloods revenge our bloods on thee.
Villains, these terrors and these tyrannies, if tyrannies wars justice you repute, I execute, enjoined me from above to scourge the pride of such as heaven abhors. Nor am I made arch-monarch of the world, crowned and invested by the hand of Jove for deeds of bounty or nobility. But since I exercise a greater name, the scourge of God and terror of the world, I must apply myself to fit those terms in war, in blood, in death, in cruelty, and plague such peasants as resist in me the power of heaven's eternal majesty. Theridamas, Techelles, and Usumcasane, ransack the tents and the pavilions of these proud Turks, and take their concubines, making them bury this effeminate brat, for not a common soldier shall defile his manly fingers with so faint a boy. Then bring those Turkish harlots to my tent, and I'll dispose them as it likes me best. Meanwhile, take him in.
Farewell, my lord.
My lord.
All the soldiers in unison there, and yeah, that's quite a change after Xenocraty. Turkish harlots to my tent. What will he be doing with them in there? It is not clear whether it's just death or what. That's quite a change coming on there, and they just get rid of the body of Calyphas. If we can tag team the kings again, Sarah, for this this little bit, can we do that? You're not doing someone else, are you?
No, I can do
We'll just finish this scene and then we'll unpick it a little bit more. So these unhappy kings and captives. Oh, damned monster, nay, a fiend of hell, whose cruelties are not so harsh as thine, nor yet imposed with such a bitter hate.
Revenged, Theridamas and Aeacus, and let your hates extended in his pains excel the hate wherewith he pains our souls.
May never day give virtue to his eyes, whose sight, composed of fury and of fire, doth send such stern affections to his heart.
May never spirit vain or artier feed the cursed substance of that cruel heart, but wanting moisture and remorseful blood, dry up with anger and consume with hate.
Well, bark, ye dogs. I'll bridle all your tongues, and bind them close with bits of burnished steel, down to the channels of your hateful throats, and with the pains my rigour shall inflict, I'll make ye roar, that earth may echo forth the far resounding torments ye sustain, as when an herd of lusty Cimbrian bulls run mourning around about the female smiths, and stung with the fury of their following, fill all their air with troublous bellowing. I will, with engines never exercised, conquer, sack, and utterly consume your cities and your golden palaces, and with the flames that beat against the clouds, incense the heavens, and make the stars to melt, as if they were the tears of Mahomet, for hot consumption of this country's pride, until by vision or by speech I hear immortal Jove say, cease, my Tamburlaine. I will persist the terror to the world, making the meteors that, like armed men, are seen to march upon the towers of heaven, run tilting round about the firmament, and break their burning lances in the air for honour of my wondrous victories. Come, bring them into our pavilion.
And that ends the scene.
No more Mr. Nice Baby.
Well, I'm just saying that with this play, here's a thesis for you. Here's a proposition to chew on. The play isn't actually interested in the battles that are happening. They're interested in what is the psychodrama is reacting to the battles.
Yep.
The battles are a backdrop to the psychodrama of the court. In a way that the first play wasn't. This play seems very, very much interested in this continual disintegration of Tamburlaine's state of mind and his actions. Heloise, you look like you.
It's just you using the word disintegration. I feel like is very. I think that's a very apt word, because I actually am going to pose a different theory to the one we've been going with, that there's time jumps and that the suns are aging. I actually think that this is all. I feel like it feels like the sequence of events to me is happening quite fast. I feel like Xenocrates has died and Tamburlaine is just rapidly disintegrating. I think he's rapidly unraveling and getting more and more grotesque and just getting, he's being his old violent self, but just getting more and more extreme, and like the brakes are being taken off. And I think there's actually a sense of acceleration rather than a sense of this happens, then a few years later this happens, and I think it's just that he's rapidly descending into kind of violent madness.
That you take one card out from this house of cards and it all comes tumbling down like that. That stability was an illusion. Yeah,
so Xenocrates gone, and now there's nothing to hold him back, and he's dealing with the grief in a bizarre way.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense.
That's a really good call.
Yeah.
Really like that. Really like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'd just like to remind you of what you said yesterday also about the movement of these places and these people from one place to another does take time.
Yeah,
but it's 40,000 men, etc.
Yeah, but it's that internal logic thing of plays where actual time and stage time are not quite the same thing.
Given, absolutely.
Alan, I think, was trying to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to make a very similar point to what Williams just said, which is that the lapse of time between this and the preceding sequence is simply the amount of time that's necessary to move the armies from where they were to where they are now meeting. Which is why I went with a matter of months rather than years.
But if a dragon can fly as all the way from the King's Landing to the wall in half an hour, then
you've lost me with a reference to something I know nothing about.
It's the major complaint with the series before of Game of Thrones, before everyone started complaining about the final series of Game of Thrones. No spoilers, please. I haven't seen the final series yet. Things happening. Sarah. Yeah.
Oh, I just thinking about what Heloise said as well, like with the brakes coming off. If this is a few days, weeks, months, if it's fairly recent to Xenocrates' death, that actually that puts a really interesting psychological cast on what's just happened with him killing his son, because going back to what you were saying earlier, Rob, previous to this, he's when he's had a victory in battle, he's been kind of pleased with himself. He kind of does the whole big it up for me kind of thing. Whereas here, he wins in battle and he's still just furious, and it's like he's looking he's still, like, it hasn't been enough to slake his thirst for havoc and destruction. Raising this army and capturing the leaders, it still hasn't satisfied him. So, what happens is he comes home and stabs his son, and even that doesn't seem to satisfy him. And that would actually tie in with this thing, as if he's trying to kind of, if he's not working through his grief, basically, if he's just still so mad with just grief and in this frenzy after Xenocrates' death, then that would explain to an extent why he just can't, he can no longer find any satisfaction in a victory. He has to just keep going, and it's just gonna snowball, and it's not gonna get any better, is it?
No, because William, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, get your tutor ready. There's a certain Roman general does his son in for a lot less than what this boy has done.
Yeah, and not as reasonably contemporaneous.
And not that long after this play was written, either.
There's a couple of, not quite a callback. It's interesting coincidence. Sascha will bear this out, that yesterday we had a character being bridled in a play, The Trial of Treasure, in a comic vein. And in this play, we are going to have some characters bridled in a much, much more brutal way, and it's just been mentioned here. We also have something we might pick up next week if we get the right sign-ups, with the cry of Rhadamanth, and that's something we may come to another time as an exclamation, and the chronology of that might be quite interesting. I think we any additional thoughts before we move into the next scene of the act?
Nope.
Okay. So this is a nice self-contained little scene. It's pretty much a two-hander, and I'm just going to presage this by saying it is one of my favourite scenes of Marlowe. So no pressure, no pressure.
You sick puppy.
Yeah. We've had one reversal, really interesting on-stage dramatic reversal of lots of actors coming on. Let's see something perhaps similar with Enter Olympia.
Distressed Olympia, whose weeping eyes since thy arrival here behold no sun, but, closed within the compass of a tent, have stained thy cheeks and made thee look like death. Devise some means to rid thee of thy life, rather than yield to his detested suit, whose drift is only to dishonour thee. And since this earth, dewed with thy brinish tears, affords no herbs whose taste may poison thee, nor yet this air, beat often with thy sighs, contagious smells and vapours to infect thee, nor thy close cave a sword to murder thee, let this invention be the instrument.
Enter Theridamas.
Well met, Olympia. I sought thee in my tent, but when I saw the place obscure and dark, which with thy beauty thou wast wont to light, enraged I ran about the fields for thee, supposing amorous Jove had sent his son, the winged Hermes, to convey thee hence. But now I find thee, and that fear is past. Tell me, Olympia, wilt thou grant my suit?
My lord and husband's death, with my sweet sons, with whom I buried all affectations save grief and sorrow, which torment my heart, forbids my mind to entertain a thought that tends to love, but meditate on death, a fitter subject for a pensive soul.
Olympia, pity him in whom thy looks have greater operation and more force than Cynthia's in the watery wilderness. For with thy view my joys are at the full, and ebb again as thou depart'st from me.
Oh, pity me, my lord, and draw your sword, making a passage for my troubled soul, which beats against this prison to get out and meet my husband and my loving son.
Nothing but still thy husband and thy son. Leave this, my love, and listen more to me. Thou shalt be stately queen of fair Argia, and clothed in costly cloth of massy gold, upon the marble turrets of my court sit like to Venus in her chair of state, commanding all thy princely eye desires, and I will cast off arms to sit with thee, spending my life in sweet discourse of love.
No such discourse is pleasant in mine ears, but that's where every period ends with death, and every line begins with death again. I cannot love to be an empress.
Nay, lady, then, if nothing will prevail, I'll use some other means to make you yield. Such is the fury of my love. I must and will be pleased, and you shall yield. Come to the tent again.
Stay now, my lord, and will you save my honour? I'll give your grace a present of such price as all the world cannot afford the like.
What is it?
An ointment, which a cunning alchemist distilled from the purest balsamum and simplest extracts of all minerals, in which the essential form of marble stone, tempered by science metaphysical, and spells of magic from the mouths of spirits, with which, if you but anoint your tender skin, nor pistol, sword, nor lance can pierce your flesh.
Why, madam, think you to mock me thus palpably?
Prove it. I will anoint my naked throat, which when you stab, look on your weapon's point, and you shall see't rebated with the blow.
Why gave you not your husband some of it, if you loved him, and it's so precious?
My purpose was, my lord, to spend it so, but was prevented by his sudden end, and for a present easy proof thereof, that I dissemble not, try it on me.
I will, Olympia, and will keep it for the richest present of this eastern world.
Now stab.
She anoints her throat.
Now stab, my lord, and mark your weapon's point, that will be blunted if the blow be great.
Here then, Olympia.
Stabs her.
What? Have I slain her? Villain, stab thyself! Cut off this arm that hath murdered my love, in whom the learned rabbis of this age might find as many wondrous miracles as in the Theora of the world. Now, hell is fairer than Elysium, a greater lamp than that bright eye of heaven, from whence the stars do borrow all their light, wonders about the black circumference. And now the damned souls are free from pain, for every fury gazeth on her looks. Infernal Dis is courting of my love, inventing masks and stately shows for her, opening the doors of his rich treasury to entertain this queen of chastity, whose body shall be tombed with all the pomp the treasure of my kingdom may afford.
Exit, taking her away. Now, I always had a lot of respect for Theridamas, but the man's obviously a twonk.
Exactly. Till this point,
there you go. What
till
a
this
twonk.
point, you think he's actually okay, and then it's like,
Yeah.
really?
Really? And then all of a sudden
Really?
he just goes, "What? Did I stab her?"
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my God. It's like, yeah.
It's such an audaciously strange scene, and this whole subplot, because it's obviously this sort of twisted version of Xenocrate and Tamburlaine. You know, he's expecting her to fall in love with him, and he does all this lovely wooing, but he just, man, read the room. You know, when you came in, she's trying to find a weapon to kill herself again. You know,
Right?
and what do? You do it for her.
It's like,
Great. I love this scene. I think it's
Hey, do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the fairy tale Jack the Giant Killer.
oh yeah.
And Jack the Giant Killer has a leather bodkin, and he stuffs food into that, And he says, and I rips open his own stomach and the food falls out. And the giant goes, I can do that. And kills himself exactly.
So anyway.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. And you know, it is that again. It's once again these warmongers. They just can't create a stable life, can they? They just everything they touch just falls apart.
But then that turnaround at the end also to entertain this Queen of Chastity, whose body shall be tombed with all the pomp the treasure of my kingdom may afford. What?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? You're going to let the whole world know how stupid you were? What?
But also, she's like, oh, this Queen of Chastity. And like 10 lines early, he was like, well, I'm going to rape you then.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, oh man, he is, to be honest, I think when I did him the other day, I did him with a Yorkshire accent.
Yeah.
And then when I read this scene, I'm like, no, you do not deserve a Yorkshire accent.
No.
You're not savvy enough, to deserve a Yorkshire.
And you know, if I was an actor and I'd been playing Theridamas in part 1 and I got given this script, I'd be going, Matt, what have you done to my character? My character would not say this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, he just changes completely.
Usumcasane, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No, because he's more of a flatterer, he's more of a politician, isn't he? Yeah, I mean, you don't know that much about him, but that's the impression you get from his lines. Whereas Theridamas, you think he's this general, he's this kind of, soldier. He was a soldier before he met up with Tamburlaine, and you kind of get the impression there's like, even though he's done some terrible things, there's like a sort of shrewdness and a kind of battle-hardened savviness to him. But then, no.
No, nothing there.
Do you know, though, this does make me think, I was joking yesterday about how there was maybe a little scene taken out where Cupid shot him with an arrow. I'm beginning to think.
Put it back in.
Yeah, stick it back in again, yeah.
It would explain a lot.
Yeah. Anyway, fun though this diversion of assisted suicide is, I think we need to move on to close out the act with some more scenes of terrible cruelty. So this is again quite a crowded one, but I think we're reasonably okay. So I'm going to be reading one of the sons. I will then transfer myself into being one of the captured kings. So, to close this act, enter Tamburlaine, drawn in his chariot by the kings of Trebizon and Soria, with bits in their mouths, reins in his left hand, and his right hand a whip, with which he scourgeth them. Amyras, Celebinus, Techelles, Theridamas, Usumcasane, Orcanes, king of Natolia, and the king of Jerusalem, led by 5 or 6 common soldiers and other soldiers.
Hola, ye pampered jades of Asia. What, can you draw but 20 miles a day, and have so proud a chariot at your heels, and such a coachman as great Tamburlaine, from Asphaltis, where I conquered you, to Byron here, where thus I honour you? The horse that guide the golden eye of heaven, and blow the morning from their nostrils, making their fiery gait above the clouds, are not so honoured in their governor as you, ye slaves, in mighty Tamburlaine. The headstrong jades of Thrace Alcides tamed, that King Aegeus fed with human flesh, and made so wanton that they knew their strengths were not subdued in valour more divine than you by this unconquered arm of mine. To make you fierce and fit my appetite, you shall be fed with flesh as raw as blood, and drink in pails the strongest muscadel. If you can live with it, then live, and draw my chariot swifter than the racking clouds. But if not, then die like beasts, and fit for naught, but purchased for the black and fatal ravens. Thus am I right the scourge of highest Jove, and see the figure of my dignity, by which I hold my name and majesty.
Let me have coach, my lord, that I may ride and thus be drawn by these 2 idle kings.
Thy youth forbids such ease, my kingly boy. They shall tomorrow draw my chariot, while these their fellow kings may be refreshed.
O thou that swayest the region under earth, and art a king as absolute as Jove, come as thou didst in fruitful Sicily, surveying all the glories of the land, and as thou tookst the fair Proserpina, joying the fruits of Ceres' garden plot, for love, for honour, and to make her queen. So for just haste, for shame, and to subdue this proud contemner of thy dreadful power, come once in fury and survey his pride, haling him headlong to the lowest hell.
Your Majesty must get some bits for these, to bridle their contemptuous cursing tongues, that like unruly, never broken jades, break through the hedges of their hateful mouths, and pass their fixed bounds exceedingly.
I'm going to pause here because we're about to come into a car crash of the same person saying several lines. We open with this massive image. It's all image coming in here. Similar cruelty, but it's much more spectacular. And once you've bought a couple of chariots for the stage, what else are you going to do with them? They'll turn up somewhere else, I'm sure. So we got Techelles, Usumcasane, and Celebinus. So if Heloise, you stick with Techelles and Celebinus of the Sun, and Sarah, could you read Usumcasane? Usumcasane, please. So we run in. So everyone's doing their contempt at their prisoners bit.
Nay, we will break the hedges of their mouths and pull their kicking colts out of their pastures.
Your Majesty already hath devised a mean, as fit it may be, to restrain these coltish coach-horse tongues from blasphemy.
How like you that, Sir King? Why speak you not?
Ah, cruel brat, sprung from a tyrant's loins, how like his cursed father he begins to practise taunts and bitter tyrannies.
Aye, Turk, I tell thee, this same boy is he, that must, advanced in higher pomp than this, rifle the kingdoms I shall leave unsacked. If Jove, esteeming me too good for earth, raise me to match the fell Aldebaran above the threefold asceticism of earth, before I conquer all the triple world, now fetch me out the Turkish concubines. I will prefer them for the funeral they have bestowed on my abortive son.
Okay, we had the reference to the concubines earlier. We're now going to see where this cheerful plotline is going to be going. For this little sectionette, the concubines will be played by Sarah before we pause and you return to being Theridamas again. Anyone who wants to be soldiers, feel free to pile in. William, I saw a hand raised.
Yeah.
The concubines are brought in.
Where are my common soldiers now, that fought so lion-like upon asphaltous plains?
Here, my lord.
Hold ye tall soldiers, take ye queens apiece. I mean such queens as were kings' concubines. Take them, divide them, and their jewels too, and let them equally serve all your turns.
We thank your Majesty.
Brawl not, I warn you, for your lechery, for every man that so offends shall die.
Injurious tyrant, wilt thou so defame the hateful fortunes of thy victory, to exercise upon such guiltless dames the violence of thy common soldiers' lust?
Live continent then, ye slaves, and meet not me with troops of harlots at your slothful heels.
Oh, pity us, my lord, and save our honours.
Are ye not gone, ye villains, with your spoils?
And the soldiers run away with the concubines. We'll just pause there. So once again, we have a scene of incredible cruelty, starting with a visual, really just making it clear this is not going to go well, this scene. And then calling on, this is for the funeral of his abortive son, he gives the concubines to his soldiers, which is a reality of war for the time. But it
And not
really is
just that
rammed home
time.
here.
And not just that time, I would have thought.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal bit of action, actually. That flies again. Passing through the text, one can these episodes, because it's so short on the page that you can almost miss these details. Any thoughts about this scene so far, beyond the obvious?
What's particularly twisted as well is that before the concubines came in, he was talking about how because they, buried his son, he was going to let them off lightly, effectively. So this is his idea of letting them off lightly, which is just, makes it even sicker, really.
I almost think that we don't really want to be discussing this further, so let's rattle on. Let's rattle on to the end of the scene. So the soldiers have run away, and the king of Jerusalem, who's not driving any of the chariots, he's just watching his mates with bits in their teeth who cannot speak, says, "Oh, merciless, infernal cruelty!
Save your honours, 'twere in but time indeed, lost long before ye knew what honour meant.
It seems they meant to conquer us, my lord, and make us jesting pageants for their trolls.
And now themselves shall make our pageant, and common soldiers jest with all their trolls. Let them take pleasure soundly in their spoils, till we prepare our march to Babylon, whither we next make expedition.
Let us not be idle then, my lord, but presently be pressed to conquer it.
We will, Techelles. Forward then, ye jades. Now crouch, ye kings of great Asia, and tremble when ye hear this scourge will come, that whips down cities and controlleth crowns, adding their wealth and treasure to my store, the Euxine Sea, north to Anatolia, the Terrene west, the Caspian northeast, and on the south Sinus Arabicus, shall all be loaden with the martial spoils we will convey with us to Persia. Then shall my native city Samarcanda and crystal ways of fresh Jertes scream, the pride and beauty of her princely seat, be famous through the furthest continents. For there my palace royal shall be placed, whose shining turrets shall dismay the heavens and cast the fame of Ilion's tower to hell. Through the streets with troops of conquered kings I'll ride in golden armour like the sun, and in my helm a triple plume shall spring, spangled with diamonds, dancing in the air, to note me emperor of the threefold world, like to an almond tree mounted high upon the lofty and celestial mount of evergreen Selinus, quaintly decked with blooms more white than Orcanes' boughs, whose tender blossoms tremble every one at every little breath that through heaven is blown. Then, in my coach, like Saturn's royal son, mounted his shining chariot gilt with fire, and drawn with princely eagles through the path, paved with bright crystal and enchants with stars, when all the gods stand gazing at his pomp, so will I ride through Samarcanda streets until my soul, dissevered from this flesh, shall mount the milk-white way and meet him there. To Babylon, my lords, to Babylon!
And exit. In explicit plot terms, all this scene needed really to say was "to Babylon, my lords, to Babylon."
Yeah.
Nothing new here,
No.
except that he's once again setting up this display of cruelty and excess to strike fear in the people he's about to march on. And he's been here before, but it's like you can't do what you did last time. You have to go a bit further every time and a bit further every time. So there's still that political angle, but it's also that it's just now out of control, and it just gets. All tyrants seem to do this, and the cycle of fear just has to ramp up. There is no going back. Any additional thoughts as we close Act 4 there? I think we need to rattle to the end here, because I think we're feeling this isn't going to get any better, is it? It's not going to get any better.
No.
So we head to Babylon for Act 5, Scene 1. Enter the governor of Babylon, Maximus, and others upon the walls.
What saith Maximus?
My lord, the breach the enemy have made gives such assurance of our overthrow that little hope is left to save our lives, or hold our city from the conqueror's hands. Then hang out flags, my lord, of humble truce, and satisfy the people's general prayers, that Tamburlaine's intolerable wrath may be suppressed by our submission.
Villain, respect'st thou more thy slavish life than honour of thy country or thy name? Is not my life and state as dear to me, the city and my native country's weal, as anything of price with thy conceit? Have we not hope for all our battered walls to live secure and keep his forces out, when this, our famous lake of Limnus Faltis, makes walls afresh with everything that falls into the liquid substance of his stream, more strong than are the gates of death or hell? What faintness should dismay our courages, when we are thus defenced against our foe, and have no terror but his threatening looks?
Enter another, kneeling to the governor.
My lord, if ever you did deed of ruth, and now will work a refuge to our lives, offer submission, hang up flags of truce, that Tamburlaine may pity our distress, and use us like a loving conqueror. Though this be held his last day's dreadful siege, wherein he spareth neither man nor child, yet are there Christians of Georgia here, whose state he ever pitied and relieved. We'll get his pardon, if your grace would send.
How is my soul environed, and this eternized city Babylon filled with a pack of faint-heart fugitives, that thus entreat their shame and servitude?
And enter above a second citizen. My lord, if ever you will win our hearts, yield up the town and save our wives and children, for I will cast myself from off these walls, or die some death of quickest violence before I bide the wrath of Tamburlaine.
Villains, cowards, traitors to our state! Fall to the earth and pierce the pit of hell, that legions of tormenting spirits may vex your slavish bosoms with continual pains. I care not, nor the town will never yield as long as any life is in my breast.
Enter Theridamas and Techelles with soldiers.
Thou desperate governor of Babylon, to save thy life and us a little labour, yield speedily the city to our hands, or else be sure thou shalt be forced with pains more exquisite than ever traitor felt.
Tyrant, I turn the traitor in thy throat, and will defend it in despite of thee. Call up the soldiers to defend these walls.
Yield, foolish governor. We offer more than ever yet we did to such proud slaves as durst resist us till our third day's siege. Thou seest us pressed to give the last assault, and that shall bide no more regard of parley.
Assault and spare not. We will never yield.
Do we think that's a good game plan from the governor here?
Not really.
I'm just going to ask Alan, actually, your thoughts about this particular action here.
It does seem to be almost a complete rerun of the episode we had earlier on at Damascus.
Yes, I was going to say
Similar feel of defiance and bravado from the guy in charge.
But the people know. The people know what's
people
coming.
have got more sense than the government. Now,
absolutely.
That could never happen in modern times, could it?
Never.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Never.
But we do get something of an actual, if not an assault, they scale the walls is the stage direction here. So they're probably using the theatre architecture to actually do something a little more exciting. And because they've invested in the chariots, they're going to use them as before. So we get a second entrance of the chariots. So this seems to be the most active bit of stagecraft. apart from burning cities and towns we've had before. But in terms of action, we really do see something happening here. I think that's one for the staging.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly more set around in this one than because much of the rest of it is an assortment of tents.
Yeah,
effectively.
There's not been a lot of sustained action. There's a little bit more here. So, enter Tamburlaine, drawn in his chariot as before by the kings of Trebizond and Soria, Amyras, Celebinus, Usumcasane, Orcanes, king of Natolia, and the king of Jerusalem, led by soldiers and others.
Stately buildings of fair Babylon, whose lofty pillars, higher than the clouds, were wont to guide the seamen in the deep, being carried thither by the cannon's force, now fill the mouth of the asphaltus lake, and make a bridge unto the battered walls, where Belus, Ninus, and great Alexander have rode in triumph. Triumphs Tamburlaine, whose chariot wheels have burst the Syrians' bones, drawn with these kings on heaps of carcasses. Now, in the place where fair Semiramis, courted by kings and peers of Asia, hath trod the measures, do my soldiers march, and in the streets, where brave Assyrian dames have rid in pomp like rich Saturnia, with furious words and frowning visages, my horsemen brandish their unruly blades.
Re-enter Theridamas and Techelles, bringing in the governor of Babylon.
Who have ye there, my lords?
The sturdy governor of Babylon, that made us all the labour for the crown, and use such slender reckoning of your majesty.
Go, bind the villain, he shall hang in chains upon the ruins of this conquered town. Sirrah, the view of our vermilion tents, which threaten more than if the region next underneath the element of fire were full of comets of blazing stars, whose flaming train should reach down to the earth, could not affright you? No, nor I myself, the wrathful messenger of mighty Jove, that with his sword hath quailed all earthly kings, could not persuade you to submission. But still the ports were shut. Villain, I say, should I but touch the rusty gates of hell, the triple-headed Cerberus would howl, and make black Jove to crouch and kneel to me. But I have sent volleys of shot to you, yet could not enter till the breach was made.
Nor, if my body could have stopped the breach, shouldst thou have entered, cruel Tamburlaine. 'Tis not thy bloody tents can make me yield, nor yet thyself, the anger of the highest. For though thy cannon shook the city walls, my heart did never quake or courage faint.
Well, now I'll make it quake. Go, draw him up, hang him in chains upon the city walls, and let my soldiers shoot the slave to death.
Vile monster, born of some infernal hag, and sent from hell to tyrannize on earth. Do all thy worst. Nor death, nor Tamburlaine, torture or pain can daunt my dreadless mind.
Up with him then, his body shall be scarred.
But, Tamburlaine, in Limnus Faltus lake there lies more gold than Babylon is worth, which, when the city was besieged, I hid. Save but my life, and I will give it thee.
Then, for all your valour, you would save your life? Whereabout lies it?
Under a hollow bank, right opposite against the western gate of Babylon.
Go thither, some of you, and take his gold.
Exit some attendants.
The rest forward with execution. Away with him hence. Let him speak no more. I think I make your courage something quail.
And exeunt attendants with the governor of Babylon, who presumably has a gag in his mouth and is screaming all the way. An interesting theme. I don't know if I'm overplaying this. I'm getting these people are constantly saying, "You're forcing us to fight this effort." It's like everyone's a bit tired. You know, we've played this game before. They're making it just surrender. It's just easier. And then when Tamburlaine's talking about, "I'll hang him on the walls," Oh no, we've done that one. We'll shoot at you as well. And it's like there's constantly. It's not just a playwright's question of how do you keep making fresh essentially the same action. It's also that the characters are not sure how to keep fresh their terrors and their despairs. I don't know if I'm overplaying that, but it was just a thought that kept coming up.
I think certainly at this stage they're drained, and I mean, even from listening to that, the language is very laboured, and even when it's written down, it's very laboured. You know, it's not. And just listening to it, it's almost as if Tamburlaine's the only one who's keeping some sense of rhythm going to his speeches. The rest just seem very flat.
Going through the motions.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so rhythm-wise, it reflects really, really well.
Are they drained though, or are they jaded?
Well,
It's
bit
Drained
like-
both.
and jaded, I think.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Drained implies that, oh man, I wish this would just stop. I've had enough. Whereas jaded, I think it's almost like they've become so numbed to it. They need new experiences to kind of pique their palates, which puts a much more twisted slant on it, doesn't it, really?
Yeah,
I-
could do. Could do.
I just wonder, in fact, whether Tamburlaine is thinking, oh, for God's sake, look, we've been through this act before. Why can't the buggers just give in?
Yeah. I mean, that's the point of the display and the cruelty. I mean, the people got the message, but the leaders never do.
Yeah.
And this
No.
whole thing of, you know, oh, you would surrender for gold. You know, you'd save your life for gold, and you know, that deal wasn't properly sorted out.
That was really badly thought out on the governor's part.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if there's an action there when he says you would, for your valor, you would save your life, as if there should be a sword at his throat going, well, tell me now, because you can die now or in a few minutes' time. I wonder if there's an implied action there.
Yeah.
Possible.
I think I'd put one in.
I would too, because otherwise, why is he going to fess up like that?
Yeah.
I mean, why all that bluster right up to just turn?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen The Hit with Terence Stamp?
No.
1970s. Awesome movie. Oh, I've given it away now. That shouldn't be.
Spoiler alert, retrospectively.
Don't ever see that movie.
Not
You'll
gonna
be
comment,
spoiled.
I'll see if I can edit
Spoiler
that out
alert.
later.
Well done. Well done. Great, William.
Anyway, let's rattle to the end of the scene.
Shit.
Could I ask Heloise, could you read in the various kings, if you're free? I don't think you're saying anything, because I need to be Amyras again more than I need to be a king. So you're the king of Trebizond as well as king of Jerusalem, because I think that's the easiest way of doing it. So, exuent attendance with the governor of Babylon.
When this is done, we'll march from Babylon and make our greatest haste to Persia. These jades are broken-winded and half-tired. Unharness them and let me have fresh horse.
Attendants unharness the kings of Trebizond and Soria.
So now their best is done to honour me. Take them up and hang them both up presently.
Vile tyrant, barbarous, bloody Tamburlaine.
Take them away, Theridamas. See them dispatched.
I will, my lord.
Exit with the kings of Trebizond and Soria.
Come, Asian viceroys, to your tasks a while, and take such fortune as your fellows felt.
First let thy Scythian horse tear both our limbs, rather than we should draw thy chariot, and, like base slaves, abject our princely minds to vile and ignominious servitude.
Rather lend... Oh, sorry, it's not me. Sorry.
Rather lend me thy weapon, Tamburlaine, that I may sheathe it in this breast of mine. 1,000 deaths could not torment our hearts more than the thought of this doth vex our souls.
They will talk still, my lord, if you do not bridle them.
Bridle them, and let me to my coach.
So attendants bridle Orcanes, king of Natolia and the king of Jerusalem. So we've swapped horses and harnessed them to the chariots. The governor of Babylon appears hanging in chains on the walls. Re-enter Theridamas And Amyras speaks. See now, my lord, how brave the captain hangs.
'Tis brave indeed, my boy. Well done. Shoot first, my lord, and then the rest shall follow.
Then have at him, to begin with all.
Bang, 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 bang.
Yet save my life, and let this wound appease the mortal fury of great Tamburlaine.
No, though Asphaltis Lake were liquid gold, and offered me as ransom for thy life, yet shouldst thou die. Shoot him all at once.
Bang, 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 bang.
So now he hangs like Baghdad's governor, having as many bullets in his flesh as there be breaches in a battered wall. Go now and bind the burghers hand and foot, and cast them headlong in the city's lake. Tartars and Persians shall inhabit there, and to command the city I will build a citadel, that all Africa, which hath been subject to the Persian king, shall pay me tribute for in Babylon.
What shall be done with their wives and children, my lord?
Techelles, drown them all, man, woman, and child. Leave not a Babylonian in the town.
I will about it straight. Come, soldiers.
Exit with soldiers.
Now, Kasani, where's the Turkish Al-Quran and all the heaps of superstitious books found in the temples of that Mohammed, whom I have thought a god? They shall be burnt.
Here they are, my lord.
Well said. Let there be a fire presently. In vain, I see, men worship Mohammed. My sword hath sent millions of Turks to hell, slew all his priests, his kinsmen and his friends, and yet I live untouched by Mohammed. There is a God full of revenging wrath, from whom the thunder and the lightning breaks, whose scourge I am, and him will I obey. So, Kasani, fling them in the fire.
And they burn the books.
Now, Mohammed, if thou hast any power, come down thyself and work a miracle. Thou art not worthy to be worshipped, that sufferest flames of fire to burn the writ wherein the sum of thy religion rests. Why sendest thou not a furious whirlwind down to blow thy Al-Quran up to thy throne, where men report their suitors by God himself, or vengeance on the head of Tamburlaine that shakes his sword against thy majesty and spurns the abstracts of thy foolish laws? Well, soldiers, Mohammed remains in hell. He cannot hear the voice of Tamburlaine. Seek out another godhead to adore, the God that sits in heaven, if any God, for he is God alone, and none but he.
Re-enter Techelles.
I have fulfilled your highness's will, my lord. Thousands of men, drowned in Asphaltis' lake, have made the water swell above the banks, and fishes, fed by human carcasses, amazed, swim up and down upon the waves, as when they swallow asphodita, which makes them fleet aloft and gape for air.
Well then, my friendly lords, what now remains but that we leave sufficient garrison, and presently depart to Persia, to triumph after all our victories?
Aye, good my lord, let us in haste to Persia, and let this captain be removed the walls to some high hill about the city here.
Let it be so. About it, soldiers. But stay, I feel myself distempered suddenly.
What is it dares distemper Tamburlaine?
Something, Techelles, but I know not what. But forth, ye vassals, whatsoe'er it be, sickness or death can never conquer me.
Or can it? Okay. Again, more staged horrors piling on there. The shooting of the governor on the wall, followed by the burning of the Quran, which is followed then by the question of, is Tamburlaine struck down by an angry god?
Or possibly an angry librarian.
Yes.
I mean, you don't want to cross a librarian.
and it is a scene that is very difficult for people staging today because of of the offence that could be caused by it, even though in a sense the scene is entirely about that offence, and of course obviously no one would actually be doing that live as an actual thing.
But that said, there's a reason he didn't burn a Bible in that play instead of an Alcoran.
Oh yes, yes. And productions have played around with doing all the various religious books in modern stage. And I think the RSC did that in the most recent one. So that is a modern stagecraft issue that needs to be addressed, and what one says about that.
On the question of the angry librarian, the immediate mental image that came in my mind was Pratchett.
Yes, do not call me monkey. Right. So we've got an intimation of death from Tamburlaine. Do we feel that he's right when he says sickness or death can never conquer me? It's very pride of life. That's going back a few hundred years of dramatic literature there. Very similar character, actually.
Yeah.
Almost is that very Herody figure that Tamburlaine is also as well, who comes to a cropper in some of the mystery cycle text, of which Marlowe seems to have a reasonably good knowledge of. But we've forgotten all about Callapine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, where is he?
He's in the next scene. He's
behind you.
Son of Bajazeth. He's still out and about. I'm sure he's gonna be active, and this is going to be really exciting stuff from Callapine. So enter Callapine, plus a king of Amasia, a captain, and train with drums and trumpets.
King of Amasia, now our mighty host marcheth in Asia Major, where the streams of Euphrates and Tigris swiftly run. And here may we behold great Babylon, circled about with Limna's faultless lake, where Tamburlaine with all his army lies, which being faint and weary with the siege, we may lie ready to encounter him before his host be full from Babylon, and so revenge our latest grievous loss, if God or Mahomet send any aid.
Doubt not, my lord, but we shall conquer him, the monster that hath drunk a sea of blood, and yet gapes still more to quench his thirst. Our Turkish sword shall headlong send to hell, and that vile carcass, drawn by warlike kings, the fowls shall eat, for never sepulchre shall grace this base-born tyrant Tamburlaine.
When I record my parents' slavish life, their cruel death, mine own captivity, my viceroy's bondage under Tamburlaine, methinks I could sustain 1,000 deaths, to be revenged of all his villainy. Ah, sacred Mahomet, thou that hast seen millions of Turks perish by Tamburlaine, kingdoms made waste, brave cities sacked and burnt, and but one host is left to honor thee. Aid thy obedient servant Callapine, and make him, after all these overthrows, to triumph over cursed Tamburlaine.
Fear not, my lord. I see great Mahomet clothed in purple clouds, and on his head a chaplet brighter than Apollo's crown, marching about the air with armed men to join with you against this Tamburlaine.
Renowned general, sorry.
That's you.
Yeah. A renowned general, mighty Callapine, though God himself and holy Mahomet should come in person to resist your power, yet might your mighty host encounter all, and pull proud Tamburlaine upon his knees to sue for mercy at your highness' feet.
Captain, the force of Tamburlaine is great, his fortune greater, and the victories wherewith he hath so sore dismayed the world are greatest to discourage all our drifts. Yet, when the pride of Cynthia is yet full, she wanes again, and so shall his, I hope. For we have here the chief selected men of 20 several kingdoms at the least, nor ploughman, priest, nor merchant stays at home. All Turkey is in arms with Callapine, and never will we sunder camps and arms before himself or his be conquered. This is the time that must eternize me for conquering the tyrant of the world. Come, soldiers, Let us lie in wait for him, and if we find him absent from his camp, or that he be rejoined again at full, assail it, and be assured of victory.
So at the end of that scene, there's going to be a battle, isn't there? There's going to be an amazing big battle between Callapine and Tamburlaine, and Tamburlaine's got to die, isn't it? That's got to be where this is going. That's got to be it. I'm really looking forward to seeing Callapine getting his revenge in. He's got a lot of he's pulled together another force to try and take Tamburlaine down. That's definitely going to happen.
Oh yeah.
Or not.
Okay, we go into the final scene, the final countdown. And I'll just say to Tamburlaine, I don't think you will do this, but do not allow the presages of death to slow down your pace unduly. These things could stretch out for a while because you need to take a bit of an in-breath. There's quite a bit of this to come. So, scene 3, enter Theridamas, Techelles, and Usumcasane. I'm sure for a war council. I'm sure that's what's going to be happening now.
Weep, heavens, and vanish into liquid tears. Fall, stars that govern his nativity, and summon all the shining lamps of heaven to cast their bootless fires to the earth and shed their feeble influence in the air. Muffle your beauties with eternal clouds, for hell and darkness pitch their pitchy tents, and death with armies of Cimmerian spirits gives battle against the heart of Tamburlaine. Now, in defiance of that wonted love, your sacred virtues poured upon his throne and made his state an honour to the heavens, these cowards invisibly assail his soul and threaten conquest on our sovereign. But if he die, your glories are disgraced. Earth droops and says that hell in heaven is placed.
Oh, then, ye powers that sway eternal seats and guide this massy substance of the earth, if you retain desert of holiness, as your supreme estates instruct our thoughts, be not inconstant, careless of your fame, bear not the burden of your enemies' joys, triumphing in his fall whom you've advanced, but, as his birth, life, health, and majesty were strangely blessed and governed by heaven, so honour heaven, till heaven and dissolved be, his birth, his life, his health, and majesty.
Blush, heaven, to lose the honour of thy name, to see thy footstools set upon thy head, and let no baseness in thy haughty breast sustain a shame of such inexcellence, to see the devils mount in angels' thrones, and angels dive into the pools of hell, and though they think their painful date is out, and that their power is puissant as Jove's, which makes them manage arms against thy state, yet make them feel the strength of Tamburlaine, thy instrument and note of majesty is greater far than they can thus subdue. For if he die, thy glory is disgraced, earth droops, and says that hell in heaven is placed. Just stepping in to read Usumcasane there, because it's a bit of excessive to elide the two speeches together. Enter Tamburlaine, drawn in his chariot by Orcanes and King of Jerusalem, with Amyras, Celebinus, and physicians.
What daring god torments my body thus, and seeks to conquer mighty Tamburlaine? Shall sickness prove me now to be a man that hath been termed the terror of the world? Techelles and the rest, come, take your swords, and threaten him whose hand afflicts my soul. Come, let us march against the powers of heaven, and set black streamers in the firmament to signify the slaughter of the gods. Our friends, what shall we do? I cannot stand. Come, carry me to war against the gods, that thus envy the health of Tamburlaine.
Ah, good my lord, leave these impatient words, which add much danger to your malady.
Why, shall I sit and languish in this pain? No, strike the drums, and in revenge of this, come. Let us charge our spears and pierce his breast, whose whose shoulders bear the axis of the world, that if I perish, heaven and earth may fade. Theridamas, haste to the court of Jove. Will him to send Apollo hither straight to cure me, or I'll fetch him down myself.
Sit still, my gracious lord. This grief will cease and cannot last, it is so violent.
Not last, Techelles. No, for I shall die. See, where my slave, the ugly monster Death, shaking and quivering, pale and wan for fear, stands aiming at me with his murdering dart, who flies away at every glance I give, and when I look away, comes stealing on. Villain, away, and hie thee to the field. I and mine army come to load thy back with souls of 1,000 mangled carcasses. Look, where he goes. But see, he comes again, because I stay. Techelles, let us march, and weary death with bearing souls to hell.
Pleaseth your majesty to drink this potion, which will abate the fury of your fit, and cause some milder spirits govern you.
Tell me what you think of my sickness now.
I viewed your urine, and the hypostasis, thick and obscure, doth make your danger great. Your veins are full of accidental heat, whereby the moisture of your blood is dried. The humidum and calla, which some hold is not a parcel of the elements, but of a substance more divine and pure, is almost clean extinguished and spent, which, being the cause of life, imports your death. Besides, my lord, this day is critical, dangerous to those whose crisis is as yours. Your arteries, which alongst the veins convey the lively spirit which the heart engenders, are parched and void of spirit, that the soul, wanting those argonons by which it moves, cannot endure by argument of art. Yet, if your majesty may escape this day, no doubt but you shall soon recover all.
Then I will comfort all my vital parts, and live in spite of death above a day.
And there are larums within. That physician speech is fascinating because surely he's afraid to say you're going to die, and so there's this backpedaling that happens. And I just wonder who's is it Tamburlaine himself that he's afraid of explicitly, or are there implicit hints from the others that you can't tell him he's going to die? There's a real comedy potential here, actually, in this.
Don't you think that's also the plight of doctors in that period?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this guy is applying the best patter that he can have with the humoral knowledge that he has, again, to, just to confuse by his speech itself. Because, what was the best survival rate at that period? It wasn't that good.
No. And you don't tell a king that they're going to die, or queen. It's treason to explicitly tell a monarch that they're going to die, because you're not supposed to do that. So
compassing the death of the king.
Yeah. So it's a really difficult position. I think dramatically that's really interesting. Whereas somewhat comes before, there's an awful lot of throat clearing going on in that scene. And it is interesting how this ending is playing out. But anyway, enter a messenger. My lord, young Callapine, that lately fled from your majesty, have now gathered a fresh army, and hearing your absence in the field, offers to set upon us presently.
See, my physicians, now how Jove hath sent a present medicine to recure my pain. My looks shall make them fly, and, might I follow, there should not one of all the villains' power live to offer of another fight.
I joy, my lord, your highness is so strong, that can endure so well your royal presence, which only will dismay the enemy.
I know it will, Cassane. Draw, you slaves! In spite of death, I will go show my face.
Exit Tamburlaine with all the rest, and presently re-enter.
Thus are the villain cowards fled for fear, like summer's vapours vanished by the heat sun. And could I but a while pursue the field, that Callapine should be my slave again. But I perceive my martial strength is spent. In vain I strive and rail against those powers that meant to invest me in a higher throne, as much too high for this disdainful earth. Give me a map, then let me see how much is left for me to conquer all the world, that these, my boys, may finish all my wants.
And someone brings him a map.
Here I began to march towards Persia, along Armenia and the Caspian Sea, and thence into Bithynia, where I took the Turk and his great empress prisoners. Then marched I into Egypt and Arabia, and here, not far from Alexandria, whereas the Terrene and the Red Sea meet, being less than full 100 leagues, I meant to cut a channel to them both, that men might quickly sail to India, and thence to Nubia near Borno Lake, and so along the Ethiopian Sea, cutting the tropic line of Capricorn, I conquered all as far as Zanzibar. Then, by the northern part of Africa, I came at last to Graecia, and from thence to Asia, where I stay against my will, which is from Scythia, where I first began, backwards and forwards, near 5,000 leagues. Look here, my boys, see what a world of ground lies westward from the midst of Cancer's line unto the rising of this earthly globe, whereas the sun, declining from our sight, begins the day with our antipodes. And shall I die and this unconquered? Lo, here, my sons, are all the golden mines, inestimable drugs and precious stones, more worth than Asia and the world beside. And from the Antarctic pole eastward behold, as much more land, which never was descried, wherein are rocks of pearl that shine as bright as all the lamps that beautify the sky. And shall I die, this unconquered? Here, lovely boys, that death forbids my life, that let our lives command in spite of death.
Alas, my lord, how should our bleeding hearts, wounded and broken with your highness' grief, retain a thought of joy or spark of life? Your soul gives essence to our wretched subjects, whose matter is incorporate in your flesh.
Your pains do pierce our souls, no hope survives, for by your life we entertain our lives.
But sons, this subject not of force enough to hold the fiery spirit it contains, as part, imparting his impressions by equal portions into both your breasts. My flesh, divided in your precious shapes, shall still retain my spirit, though I die, and live in all your seeds immortally. Then now remove me, that I may resign my place and proper title to my son. First, take my scourge and my imperial crown, and mount my royal chariot of estate, that I may see thee crowned before I die. Help me, my lords, to make my last remove.
They assist Tamburlaine to descend from the chariot.
A woeful change, my lord, that daunts our thoughts, more than the ruin of our proper souls.
Sit up, my son. Let me see how well thou wilt become thy father's majesty.
And they crown him, and him is me. With what a flinty bosom should I joy the breath of life and burden of my soul, if not resolved into resolved pains, my body's mortified lineaments should exercise the motions of my heart, pierced with the joy of any dignity. O Father, if the unrelenting ears of death and hell be shut against my prayers, and that the spiteful influence of heaven deny my soul fruition of a joy, how should I step or stir my hateful feet against the inward powers of my heart, leading a life that only strives to die and plead in vain unpleasing sovereignty?
Let not thy love exceed thine honour, son, nor by thy mind that magnanimity that nobly must admit necessity. Sit up, my boy, and with these silken reins bridle the steeled stomachs of these jades.
My lord, you must obey his majesty, since fate commands and proud necessity.
Heavens witness me, With what a broken heart and damned spirit I ascend this seat, and send my soul before my father die, his anguish and his burning agony.
Now fetch the hearse of fair Xenocrate. Let it be placed by this my fatal chair, and serve as parcel of my funeral.
Then feels your majesty no sovereign ease, nor may our hearts, all drowned in tears of blood, joy any hope of your recovery?
Casane, no, the monarch of the earth, and eyeless monster that torments my soul, cannot behold the tears ye shed for me, and therefore still augments his cruelty.
Then let some god oppose his holy power against the wrath and tyranny of death, that his tear-thirsty and unquenched hate may be upon himself reverberate.
They bring in the hearse of Xenocrate.
Now, eyes, enjoy your latest benefit, and when my soul hath virtue of your sight, pierce through the coffin and the sheet of gold, and glut your longings with a heaven of joy. So reign, my son, scourge and control those slaves, guiding thy chariot with thy father's hands. As precious is the charge thou undertakest, as that which Clymenne's brain-sick son did guide, when wandering Phoebe's ivory cheeks were scorched, and all the earth like Etna breathing fire, be warned by him. Then learn with awful eye to sway a throne as dangerous as his. For if thy body thrive not full of thoughts, as pure and as fighters' beams, the nature of these proud rebelling jades will take occasion by the slenderest hair, and draw thee piecemeal, like Hippolytus, through rocks more steep and sharp than Caspian cliffs. The nature of thy chariot will not bear a guide of baser temper than myself. More than the heavens coach, the prize of Phaeton. Farewell, my boys, my dearest friends, farewell. My body feels, my soul doth weep to see your sweet desires deprive my company. For Tamburlaine, the scourge of God, must die.
And thus, indeed, with that final line of branding, he does. Meet heaven and earth, and here let all things end, for earth hath spent the pride of all her fruit, and heaven consumed his choicest living fire. Let earth and heaven his timeless death deplore, for both their worths will equal him no more. End.
Interesting.
Wow. Lots of things, but let's start with that exit and re-entrance. That it's really made clear that Tamburlaine's presence is what holds all things together. He can exit, and if not win a battle, but certainly put the fear of God into everybody outside.
Yeah.
It's not that there's a scene missing there. It's an exit, and you hear "ah" or something, and he comes back in again. And so he's got a line of succession. Everything's gone to his son. His son is suitably traumatized to probably do really horrible things.
Yeah.
But do we think this is going to last?
No.
No. It's a one-man band.
Yeah, and you just know that Techelles and Theridamas, they're gonna support Amyras for a bit, and then they're just going to be like, oh yeah, well maybe we could he's a bit young, and maybe we could just take that empire for ourselves. There's going to be loads of infighting.
I mean, a more recent political resonance for me is Russia 1953, fall of Stalin.
Oh yeah.
You know, when effectively the Politburo fell apart and fighting each other in all directions.
Yeah. And you've got a tyrant there who's been willing to do all sorts of hideous crimes to keep power and everything in place using terror. But it seems to be a thing that continues, onwards and forever.
That's really an example that comes to mind. There are innumerable ones.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, the one thing that came to me through reading that bit in particular was the amount of bile that was effectively going in Tamburlaine's direction for being base spawn.
Yeah, there's been a constant, and this is a thing that Marlowe added to this story, is that he's a shepherd, and he's not a king, and that's a very deliberate thing that's been a running theme. Yeah,
says the
But
son
I
of
think
a cobbler.
it was ramped.
yeah. Yes.
Sorry,
So William, say that again.
I said the son of a cobbler.
Yeah. No, Marlowe is very much the working class lad made good. He's got all these this education through luck and skill. But he really doesn't come from any level of privileged background at all. I'm not looking askance at Upstart Crow at all. No, absolutely not. I'm not giving it the evil eye. You don't become suddenly magically posh just because you go to university. Sorry. When he gets the map out and suddenly it's like, oh, memories.
Yeah.
But
Remember when we conquered there? All these places we've mentioned earlier, we now get to see.
But that refers back to a discussion we had yesterday afternoon on it will be interesting to draw a map of it without actually knowing that was
going to happen.
going to happen.
The play is literally working us to this point, and that's part of the reason we have all this excessive geography. Is probably for this scene, which is a set piece. This is a set piece moment.
I mean, it's an interesting one because you end up in some ways with, I think, probably slightly more ambivalent feelings about Tamburlaine following that final speech.
Explain.
There's a form of nobility in the way that he does it. Yes, he's a ruthless so-and-so, but many leaders over millennia have so been.
Yeah, there's a lot of plays where pretty terrible people try and have their cake and eat it at the end. And I don't think he's won the room over with that closing oration. Sascha, any thoughts?
Well, the only major thing that I would say is that it's certainly come to that point where it's now make or break, and it's, for me, I found it very confusing myself in a way, because now I'm not even sure. We've grown to, we've followed the journey, and it's like, am I supposed to be feeling sorry for him? We hate him up until this point. I'm not sure how to feel about Tamburlaine at this moment in time, to be honest.
That's a really interesting place to leave an audience, depending on how you pitch the performance and the play, because they leave the worst to last, don't they? Or just prior to last. I mean, those final horrors really are visual. Yeah. I mean, it's visual, and then you just have him passing. Oh yeah, there's lots of bodies in the river.
Yeah. Oh God, that was just so grim.
And that's almost more, again, it's that thing of the thing that gets you is actually hidden in the text sometimes. It's not always just the visual stuff. The visual stuff then sets you up for an image that is in your head and that you can't actually get out, because that's an image we've had in modern conflicts with bodies floating down rivers.
And there's no catharsis. Because of the way he dies, because of the way Marlowe's chosen to end the play, you don't get any of that cleansing kind of, I suppose you could say it's playing to base instincts to have, Callapine or Orcanes come and just, defeat him. But it's like, actually, after all that, I think, me personally, if I'd been in that audience, I'd have been like, oh man, rubbish end of season 2. It's such pathos after, you know, you've had all that, and the horror piling on top of horror, piling on top of horror, and it's like, oh my god, we just have to cleanse our palates of this guy, and we don't really get the chance to do that. We don't get that catharsis because he just kind of dies, and
But
it's
it's
like
unsettling. It's
Yeah.
unsettling. That's what it is.
Yeah, I really like that because if someone beats him, they're probably going to be just as bad as him. I'm not saying the status quo after this is going to get any better, but this whole play has not been. It's like all of the battles and the people trying to take down Tamburlaine is a massive MacGuffin. Tamburlaine takes down Tamburlaine. It's his pride. It's his arrogance. It's and
he doesn't though, really, does he? He doesn't really take him. That would be a really satisfying ending if he did something like an hubris took him down.
Well, he does say he can't die. He does say that disease
Well,
cannot get him.
Well, yeah, that's true. He does.
It's
but
it's very reminiscent of Pride of Life, which is I don't believe for a second that Marlowe would have known of. But it's it's one of the earliest medieval morality plays we have, and the King of Life goes, "Nobody can kill me, not even death." Enter death, and it really resonates for me in that.
Why do you think Marlowe wouldn't have known that?
Just simply where the script exists. It was in a manuscript in Ireland. The odds on him knowing of its existence is practically nil, I would have thought. There's no printing history that I think we know of. He might have done, or he might have known a play that was very similar to it that happened later. It's a very similar theme. The Herod in the End Town sequence is very similar. The death of Herod in there is a very similar thing, but that specific text, I doubt.
What I found in some ways slightly unsatisfying was the fact they broke the sort of modern rules of the Detectives Club of the 20th century, which is the Deus Ex Machina. Where he suddenly falls sick after burning the Quran. Which is, oh, I can't think how to end this. Oh, send on the gods.
I don't know if it's quite that far. I think it's always intended. I don't think he reached Act 4 and went, where do I go? But I do see your point. I mean, I think it's trying to do something different, and
sorry.
So go, Sarah.
I was just going to say it's almost like he's sort of hoisted himself with his own petard, Marlowe, because it's because he's written a play called Tamburlaine the Great. It's like, well, I'm going to do something different with this, and like he's not going to be defeated. He's actually going to, he's going to die by illness or not natural causes, but, he's got disease or whatever, and no one is going to defeat him. And that's, he's Tamburlaine the Great. He's never going to be defeated in battle. And in doing that, he's just kind of, he's created quite an unsatisfying ending. Although, it does play with your expectations for sure. But
well, let's pose it as a different thing. Thinking of it as a purely separate play is not part 2, but just a play of a conqueror going to rack and ruin. Does that hold well? I mean, what I like about this play is I feel like it's looking for more of a plot, actually. There's more of an arc and a narrative here in terms of his family life that really interests me, and I find battles frequently can get very, very boring. And that the psychodrama going on there is really, really engaging. And that as an individual play, I kind of find it more challenging and more interesting as a playwright than I do part 1.
It's definitely more interesting. All that psychodrama. Yeah.
Any thoughts, Heloise?
No, yes, lots of. I've quite enjoyed listening to other people's thoughts. I like that it's unsatisfying. I think it is kind of more interesting than if he truly got his comeuppance, and because it kind of is, how it happens in reality. Like it sort of feels like this more truthfully mirrors reality. Like he was a great Tamburlaine the Great. He was a great military power and figure. So he did die undefeated. And that does just leave a quite sort of unsatisfying power vacuum, where you know that inevitably what happens next is not going to be pleasant. And you kind of just get a sense of continual, like, that things are just going to go on and things aren't going to change. No one's learnt anything. That's what I think is interesting about it. Doesn't feel like anyone has learnt something.
No, if anything, he's passed the trauma on to the next generation, and the cycle of violence is actually just going to get worse.
Exactly.
But probably more inward than outward. That's interesting. William, do you have any final thoughts? Because we are well into extra time now, and I'm aware that we do need to wrap up.
Again, this dissatisfaction with the ending, it peters out, I think, in his favor. And yet I'm left also like I was left at the end of The Sopranos. All through that last season of The Sopranos, I despised Tony. I did not like him. Not from where I started. I really loved this guy when I first started. Same with Tamburlaine. We started and it was really good, but it's like this litany of moral despicability, if you will, that it just leaves you like you want revenge. I mean, revenge is a very natural emotion to come up after all these things that he's done. You want some kind of payback. And yet even the gods can't provide it. And yeah. Wow, what a journey, guys. It's been really, thank you very much for this. Really.
Yes, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Here's for season 3.
That was the thought that occurred to me. Was
me
he
too.
intending a season 3 that never got commissioned?
It's a really good question, because there is a story here that actually is, that you could take this further and do all sorts with this material. And where modern productions tend to cut, I actually look at this going, no, you could expand.
Yeah, the sons.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the son's journey in all this? I quite agree.
Yeah, there's more to be mined there, actually, and lovely though these thoughts are, I really do need to wrap up. Thank you so much. This has been a really lovely week with Tamburlaine, he said in a weird way. My week with Tamburlaine.
Well, you came out of it better than some did.
Yes, we survived Tamburlaine. Hopefully next week we will be rattling on with another 2-parter, or at least very, very different, but also very similar. Hopefully we're looking at the Spanish tragedy, parts 1 and 2 next week. So long as we have the sign-ups. If you are watching this relatively soon of it going up, then there is a sign-up form available, or get in touch with us on Twitter at Beyond Shakes and join us, because this is a really fun afternoon for us all.
Yeah.
And I'll say goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.